Hey Kyle, this is Dr. Dale here, answering your question here on Facebook. I thought it'd be better for me to answer it through a video again, just because of the amount of information and research I'd like to cover with you. You had a great question, very intelligent question, is why would, being that the vaccine is a deactivated or dead virus, Bordetella pertussis is actually a bacteria. It's not a virus, so no harm, no foul there. Don't worry about it. A lot of people make that mistake, but it's a bacteria. But let's talk about this real quick because it is an acellular bacteria, so it's not the whole cell vaccine, the DTaP, an A in there. If it's DTWP, it's whole cell bacteria. So, and they had to discontinue the whole cell bacteria vaccine in the 1990s because of the significant number of harms and deaths and mental defects that the whole cell vaccine actually caused. A lot of damage was done by that vaccine in the history, if you read back through history of vaccinations. So anyways, so let's go to answer this question for you. Why would people who receive the DTaP vaccine have a greater likelihood of spreading illness to those immune-compromised patients and people such as those going through immune-suppressive therapies like chemotherapy or cancer patients? Or why would the vaccinated put children, infants, at greater risk? So we'll talk a little bit about that and try and explain this to you and review it and help you understand. And then ultimately, you know, what I want to do is just review a bunch of information and research. You can Google the titles of this and find the research documents, read them yourself, and just be informed, and then make your own conclusion. Don't just make take my opinion for it, but let's go through it. So here was the research study that I initially commented on because many people want to blame anti-vaxxers, but in actuality, the majority of people spreading the illness and being infected and having severe illness is those that are vaccinated. So again, there's the title. You can pause it and read it if you'd like. The study was to actually vaccinate baboons at 2, 4, 6 months and then challenge them with the bacteria at 7 months. So they actually infected them with a live bacteria, the live bacteria, after vaccinating these baboons. So the acellular pertussis vaccine were protected from severe illness or symptoms. They were protected from symptoms, but asymptomatic individuals can sometimes have a greater likelihood of complications and secondary infections and things like that. So it doesn't always mean you're safer or you're healthier because you're asymptomatic. It actually means that you're much worse off in cases of measles and things. It's actually they've found that children who have more severe, higher fevers fight off the infection much more rapidly and have less likely of having severe complications. It just means your immune system is working hard at killing off the invading virus or bacteria. Anyways, let's go through here. Do not clear the infection faster than naive animals. So those naive have never been exposed, readily transmitted. So they didn't clear it off faster. They transmitted Bordetella pertussis to unvaccinated contacts. So even the whole cell induced a more rapid clearance, but they still carried it and could transmit it. Note that. So there's not a vaccine currently available that can stop transmission, fully stop transmission of this bacteria. So this is the overview of the abstract I'm reading through mainly here. The observation, acellular pertussis vaccine, which induces an immune response mismatched to that induced by natural infection, fails to prevent colonization and transmission. So, people, and here's a theory. It may be because there's a dead or acellular, not the whole cell bacteria, not a live bacteria that they're injecting into people, so it's not a direct infection by the vaccine, but secondary contact, or many people, and many of us are carrying around staph, strep, everything. We have that on our skin, in our mouth, in our lungs, different places, but our immune system is strong enough to keep those at bay, or the good bacteria that lives in a symbiotic relationship with our bodies. We don't express disease, so we're strong enough to keep them at bay. But once we receive a vaccine, we'll talk about here in a second, we're actually weakening our immune systems. This is what vaccines are being found to do nowadays, and we'll review some of that information here in a second. So let's kind of read through real quick, I'll look through some things, maybe take some notes. Human challenge studies. Here's an interesting note. Human challenge studies have been proposed but never conducted due to a variety of logistical, ethical problems. See, they never do this. They can only do a challenge, so they never directly infect. Think about this. Would you want to enter a vaccine research study and be given a HIV vaccine and then be directly infected with HIV? No, that would be morally and ethically wrong to do that to people. Well, the same thing with this Bordetella pertussis. So, but read this right here. Read it. Including the potential for severe disease. Well, if the vaccine worked, there shouldn't be a potential for severe disease. The lack of effective therapeutic therapeutic for established disease and highly contagious pertussis. So think about it. They don't have a good therapeutic way of finding it. You have to look to boost the immune system. And later on, I'm going to talk about nutrition and stuff. Maybe not in this video, but a later video about malnutrition being the leading cause of death in children under the age of 5. And it actually causes 90% of the children, I would estimate, and again, I don't have the numbers for this, but they say the majority of children, and you can see measles studies where no one died, no child died if they were infected with measles if they are well nourished. But up to 50% of children were dying if they're malnourished. So nourishment, nutrients are key to fighting off infectious diseases. So again, vaccination induces suboptimal immune responses that is unable to prevent infection. Children with a greater risk of pertussis diagnosis. Okay, infection cleared after 30 days. Remain consistently colonized before clearing after 35 days. So those vaccinated carried the bacteria in their lungs and could spread it for longer than those colonized by a natural infection, naive baboons. So lots of great information through here. I'll probably end talking about this one right through here. Just looking to see if I have anything else. Neither vaccine was able to prevent colonization as well as immunity from the previous infection. So neither vaccine was able to prevent colonization. So whole cell or acellular. Neither vaccine could prevent colonization. So neither vaccine can prevent you from spreading the illness to those immune-compromised people or younger children, as well as immunity from previous infections. So previous infection was the greatest benefit was seen in baboons previously naturally infected. Natural immunity is by far the greatest thing that we can have. So I actually want my son to come in contact with whooping cough in his future, being that he's not vaccinated, because he'll have the greatest immunity. Thus, he'll serve in our community because we'll actually see a symptomatic result. We'll keep him isolated. We'll keep him at home. We'll keep him well nourished, breastfed, whatever we got to do to keep him healthy, get him adjusted. Do those things so that he acquires this natural immunity, and then he serves as a he no longer would serve as a vector for transmission, but people who are vaccinated can serve as a vector for transmission. See, this is a big thing people need to understand when trying to go back and forth in this argument of pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine. I'd rather natural infection and the greatest response and greatest T-cell immunity and Th17 cell responses for permanent mucosal membrane immunity memory. So yeah, you can go and read into that later on. I won't go into that too much, making sure that I covered most of this. So one research study. There is the pertussis vaccine study right there. We'll say that before I X out of it. Now let's go through. Well, let's just do this real quick since it's right up here, and I'll close it out. But so here is a court case, and I apologize for the phone in the background. But here is a U.S. Court of Federal Claims in which this individual received a flu vaccine, a tetanus, DTaP vaccine, and developed Guillain-Barré paralysis and then died. And this individual's wife actually is a man. This individual's wife received $320,000 of taxpayer money. And that's another note I should probably emphasize, is that taxpayer dollars paid this wife for the death of her husband despite the vaccine, the manufacturer didn't have to pay anything. But in our tax dollars, they paid for this guy's, this wife's loss. Terrible, terrible stuff. Now let's talk about why. How would somebody die from this stuff, and why is it so dangerous to give these vaccines? In my opinion, they're very dangerous, and let's look at the research because it's showing the same thing. They're very dangerous to give. So brush over the research here real quick. Increased risk of influenza respiratory virus infections associated with receiving inactivated influenza vaccine. So if you receive the vaccine, over the 9 months following, the vaccine recipients had an increased risk of virologically confirmed non-influenza infections. The majority of people die from bacterial infections during the flu season. And guess what? The flu vaccine increases your likelihood of that. And how does it? Well, here's a Journal of Vaccine 2012, their very own vaccine journals. So it's the horse's mouth saying it. Listen to this. The reduction of heterosubtopic immunity correlated with reduced virus-specific CD8 T cell responses. So what that means is you reduce your ability to produce CD8 T cells that are necessary for the destruction of viruses and tumors. So just take note of that too. If you reduce your T cell responses, you may be increasing your risk of cancer in your future. I wonder why there's actually a risk of what's called vaccine-induced cancer in animals. Just think about that real quick. Just mow that over for a while. Anyways, so it directly vaccinations with flu vaccine. I'm going through the flu one, not just the DTaP or acellular pertussis vaccine research, because the pertussis is just new research right now, so there's not a lot out on it, but there's a lot out on flu vaccines and how they weaken the immune system. So let's kind of look at that real quick. Here is one article. Hospitalization rates higher in children who get the flu vaccine, the flu shots. They're almost 300%, 3 times more likely to wind up in the hospital due to flu-related illness if they got vaccinated. And ultimately that's they wanted to figure out why, so they go through and they actually look at how in the world and why would children who receive the flu vaccine be more likely? Well, here is the annual vaccination against influenza virus hampers development of virus-specific CD8 T cells. Another confirmation study in the Journal of Virology 2011 showing that it hampers, it weakens your immune response if you get the flu vaccine. So we could theorize that maybe the pertussis vaccine does the same, and we don't necessarily have to theorize really because within the medical literature, it does show that, where is it at here? Let me find it. Let's get this one out of the way. This is an important one for people to understand. Early diphtheria DTP vaccination is associated with higher female mortality. And I laugh because it's so disgusting. It's so ridiculous that people are just blind faith walking into a medical physician's office accepting a vaccination, yet we have research like this that more females, more young girls will die if they receive the vaccination. And what's interesting is, to me, is that being a proponent of nutrition and things, being able to protect children of infectious illness just through nutrition by enhancing the immune response. But they say here in conclusion, surprisingly, so what's surprising is, even though the children with the best nutritional status were vaccinated early DTP vaccination was associated with an increased mortality in girls. Again, because what they're finding in the research is vaccines weaken your immune response. And that was in the first research study was where it actually they actually talked about and theorized that the vaccine itself dampens, hampers, reduces immune responses, and they did some blood work and stuff and showed some ways in which vaccinated baboons and vaccinated children even had a reduction in their immune system strength to fight off infection. Here's a recent article, a great one to read too. Public health officials know recently vaccinated individuals spread disease. Johns Hopkins warns that cancer patients shouldn't allow for visitors who were recently vaccinated against live virus vaccines, that type of thing, and not even just live virus vaccines, because you can get a dead virus vaccine, and then because of the dead virus vaccine weakens your immune system, you become a host, a vector for other infectious diseases. So evidence indicates that recently vaccinated individuals should be quarantined in order to protect public Yeah. Well, if we want to truly protect public, I mean, anyone given a vaccine that increases colonization of other infectious diseases or is a live virus vaccine and then they can spread it, you know what? They should be quarantined according to the pro-vaccine arguments. But sadly, no one really realizes this, and then they say that anti-vaxxers or children who are unvaccinated pose the greatest risk when actually it's this is my opinion. They've never tested who poses the greatest risk, but reality is they pose just the same risk as individuals who are unvaccinated. So another research article, effects of the DTaP or DTP vaccination, tetanus vaccination on allergies and allergy-related respiratory symptoms and issues. That nurse, I believe it was Amanda Schwick, was talking about her son with asthma, and thank God he can't get this vaccine because the DTP and tetanus vaccination appears to increase the risk of allergies and respiratory issues. So asthma, if your son or child has asthma, it's probably not a good idea to give him a vaccine that actually increases the risk of respiratory illness. We got this one, acellular pertussis vaccination enhances parapertussis colonization. So not just bordetella pertussis causes whooping cough, but a close related, cousin, we'll call it, bordetella parapertussis also causes whooping cough, and you're not protected by this. And ultimately what they found is their vaccination led to a 40-fold enhancement of bordetella parapertussis colonization in the mice lungs. It is speculated it involves specific immune responses skewed or dampened by acellular vaccines. So the acellular vaccine weakens, screws up your immune system. So again, major research article and journal, Royal Society of Biological Sciences, 2010. So you can go ahead and read about that as well. So let's review the rest of the research I have here. Hopefully my computer doesn't die on me here. Maybe I'll run up to the front, plug it in at the same time I'm talking here. Okay, here's another back to the flu vaccine. Live attenuated influenza vaccine enhances colonization of strep and staph bacterial infections. So bacterial infections are the leading cause of severe disease during the influenza epidemics. Again, note this, realize this, that it is not the virus, the flu virus, that causes the majority of deaths. It causes a very small fraction, sometimes estimated on less than 5% of deaths are caused by the flu virus actually, but it's secondary opportunistic diseases that take hold when people are immune compromised, and vaccines cause compromised immune systems according to all these research studies that I'm just reviewing here. Again, this is not just my opinion, this is the research. These findings may have consequences for individual bacterial disease process within upper respiratory tract as well as bacterial transmission. So vaccinated populations. So transmission occurs more in vaccinated populations according to much of this research. So, and I know I'm getting kind of my tone and stuff. I don't want to be, Kyle, I'm not going at you in any way. I just wanted you informed. But I get worked up with this because, reading all this, you can't find me a research study that shows benefits in children. You can only find research studies that show negative effects. Here's a graph. Here's the CDC's own statistics. 1999, from flu deaths alone, 25 children died. 2019, 2001 it was 13, 2002, 12 children died. 12 children died. 2003 was the very first year they allowed for the flu vaccine in children. 2003, the year vaccines were recommended for children as young as 6 months of age, we had 90. The stats from the CDC show more deaths the very year, and we've never been down to the level. We've never been down to 12, like we were prior to the use of the vaccine in children. That should say something. And then when the amount of information I just reviewed with you, and Kyle, I'm not going at you. Anybody else on there, I'm not going at you. I'm getting worked up because people got to wake up, realize that the information in the research shows harms, and the stats are showing more children dying. We need to wake up, stop lining up, pulling our sleeve up, putting our child on the table, and letting a vaccine be injected into a child when the research shows nothing but harm. And now watch this. They've known this. This is a major medical journal. Vaccination against human influenza virus prevents induction of heterosymbiotic immunity against lethal infection with something like avian flu. So what they go through here is they find that by vaccinating these mice, they actually found that there was more deaths in those vaccinated than those acquiring natural immunity. And what are the results and their conclusions at the end of the research study? Let's go down here and read it. See, this is what we're walking into. We're walking into a major problem in the future if we don't stop and look at the research, realize that what we're doing right now isn't working. Thus, during the next pandemic, especially children that receive the annual flu shot would be at higher risk to develop severe illness and fatal outcome of the disease than those that experience an infection with seasonal influenza strain. This, of course, would be of great concern and is supported by the data obtained in our mouse model. Data both in children, studies in children showing more children ill and in the hospital due to getting a flu vaccine, more children having a hampered, weakened immune system due to the flu vaccine, and you see that both with the DTaP vaccine, and now they're saying that more children will die and have severe outcomes come the next swine flu or avian or bird flu because they're getting the vaccine. See, our immune system is strengthened through natural acquired infections. We just got to make sure that we're doing the things necessary with nutrition, with reduction in stress, reduction in spinal misalignments that reduce immunity, things like that that can reduce our immune response. We have to get rid of, eliminate the interference, strengthen the body so that we can overcome these infections naturally without severe outcomes and illnesses and problems. And then we're strengthened against the future more virulent or dangerous infections. So I believe that's just about all the information. But, I have a ton more information. If you got more questions, Kyle, or anybody else out there, feel free to post questions at the bottom if you want me to review a certain vaccine or anything like that. But as you can see here, folder upon folder of individual, vaccines, conditions. Just look at the information I have regarding vaccination and autism. And then you can go into just aluminum, and you can go into, so lots and lots of information that we could cover. And I would love to share with people because I believe as a doctor, my first priority is always to educate and inform. And again, this is not my opinions. My opinions are that we need to look at the evidence, the research, and begin to do what is right for our children, not disregard evidence that there is harm, and begin to help people understand how they can truly become healthy and well and protect their children. So Kyle, I hope that answered your question to some degree. All right. God bless everyone. You can post questions down below, and if I can, I'll try and get to further questions and help people understand.